Assemblymember Catalina Cruz, welcome again to ITV Gold. I hope you're doing well today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you again.
Of course, we have you here because there's so much to discuss. A lot is happening in the state of New York, in the city of New York City, and it's so important for us to get our elected officials to come on and address the community. So just starting off this interview, I'd love to know what has happened in your District 39th with Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, and Corona since the last time we spoke. What kind of changes have been there, and what are still your challenges with COVID-19?
Look, I think one of the most unfortunate things we've seen happen in our neighborhoods that represent Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst has been the terrible economic and life impact of COVID-19. We had hundreds of people die. We had hundreds of people, if thousands of people actually be infected. And we have people who have lost everything from their jobs to loved ones to their small business. And what we're trying to now do is help our community survive and move past this terrible, terrible time in our history.
Yes, for sure. In terms of that, Assemblywoman, last time we spoke about what was needed from the state and federal level in your district especially. Your district has been very badly hit as an epicenter when New York was the epicenter of this coronavirus. What is needed right now to make sure that your district doesn't become the epicenter again and to really uplift those communities that are being hurt?
I think one of the most important things that we need is to create a healthcare system where no matter how poor or rich or what the color of your skin or religion or your sexual orientation, no matter who you are, you can walk into a hospital, you can get preventative health care, you can get health care if you have an emergency and not end up broke. We do not have that right now. We need to make sure that every single one of us can go and get the health care they need. I think the second thing that our state needs to do is create a system where every single one of my neighbors can go to a place where they can get food. Right now, if some of our neighbors lose their jobs, they have to go to a food line where they have to basically depend on charity. And in a country as, how shall we say, as wealthy as the United States, why should anyone depend on their daily food intake on charity? And I think the third thing that the state and the federal government need to do for our community is make sure that people can stay in their homes. Right now, there's folks who owe 6, maybe more months of overdue rent because they've lost their job. And that's not going to change unless they have an actual other job. And until we're able to give them the financial security that they deserve. Does that mean cancel rent while also helping small landlords maintain their buildings? That's one choice. Does that mean making sure that we're helping people pay their mortgage as well as their rent? That's another choice. For me, what matters is ensuring that people have food, healthcare, and a place to live.
Yeah. That is so important. We're just asking for basic needs right there, Assemblywoman. Yep. That's not a lot to ask for, the population that lives in the United States. How do you think the state government and the local governments have handled COVID-19 crisis in your district so far?
Not great. I think there were things that were done that were very needed and had positive impact. But in a community like mine, sometimes it came too little too late. For example, help was sent to our local hospitals eventually. But in the beginning, Elmhurst Hospital was so overwhelmed that we had people making lines outside just to get a COVID test. That we had doctors, nurses, and staff that were working around the clock, not being able to see their families and their loved ones because there was not enough medical professionals to help our community. And so while the state while the city acted, they didn't act on time and enough.
Yeah. When you're looking at these ongoing clusters of COVID-19 that are breaking out in New York City, Queens has been impacted, Brooklyn has been impacted. Are you worried and concerned about that impacting your district? And is the district ready right now, Assemblywoman, to handle a surge of cases if it happens?
Look, I think first there's that whole concept of herd immunity. I don't want people to hear, oh, well, most of our community already had COVID. Perhaps we're not going to get it again. We don't know if if you can be sick twice. We don't know that yet. We think that it's not a possibility, but I don't want to find out. I want the members of my community to continue to wear a mask, stand 6 feet apart, make sure they're washing their hands, and don't go out unless you really, really need to. And that means for food, that means for work. And so I think Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst have had it so difficult that we already know what needs to get done, and it's very few times that that I see some of our neighbors not following those rules. It isn't like in other neighborhoods where people are fighting about having to wear a mask. No, here we always know that we have to wear our mask, and so we have become so accustomed to that behavior that I think we are better prepared than when COVID hit us the first time.
Is there enough PPE supplies in your district right now?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it would depend on how severe it is this time around. I have not seen a shortage. I haven't seen. There was a time when COVID first hit that people couldn't find gloves, they couldn't find hand sanitizers, they couldn't find masks. I don't see that happening. I don't want to guess and say that there's not a shortage, but I'm not seeing it.
Yes, definitely. I want to take this part of the interview now, Assemblywoman, and discuss what's happening in the nation with the elections, but especially you are running for re-elections right now for your district. Just starting off, a little conversation on that. What are some of your key issues that you're still fighting for? And, when you look at your reign as the Assemblywoman, are you content with the changes that were made under you?
So I don't want to look at it as a rank because I'm not a queen. I want to look at it, although it is a very a good way to think of things, I want to look at it as the 2 years that I've been fighting for our community. And so during those 2 years, we've had great advances. We have driver's licenses for all. We have the DREAM Act. We passed legislation to protect workers' rights, to protect tenants. We fought really, really tough battles to make sure that our community has the resources that it needs. Thankfully, I won the Democratic primary back in June, and I do not have a Republican opponent. So technically, it's almost like I already won, but I don't take anything for granted, and I keep inviting people to go out and exercise their right to vote, because it isn't just about me. There's also a Senate race, a congressional race, a presidential race, and we want to make sure that every single member of our community goes out and votes. And I'll tell you, the first time I ran, I learned something incredibly powerful about the South Asian vote. The number of people that came out to support me, and I venture to say one of the main reasons I won is because I reached out to the South Asian community. I reached out as an immigrant, as a worker, as a woman who wanted to fight for the rights of the underserved, and the South Asian community has been extremely kind to me, and I want them to go out and vote, because what I know about their power, their elected power, I want everybody else to find out. I want everyone else to see that when the South Asian community comes out and votes, you can change history.
Let's talk about the broader election, Assemblywoman, and all of the races that are going right now. According to you, what key issues are at stake for the communities that are that are immigrant communities or communities of color? What is at stake for all of us when we are looking at these very important elections?
I think one of the most important things is survival. What are the candidates who are going to help us survive whatever is left of this pandemic and get back on our feet once the pandemic is over? So who's offering a real plan around jobs, a real plan around healthcare, a real plan around housing, and ultimately, who is going to fight to make sure that the rights we've earned as immigrants, as women, as people of color, as workers, remain protected? And so for me, when folks go out and people go out to the polls, whether it's in my, assembly, Senate, Congress, or president, those are the things you need to look at. Who respects you as an immigrant, as a human, as a person who's contributing to the community, and who's going to fight for your survival, the survival of your family, and ultimately the success of our community.
Who, according to you, would be perhaps the significant voters in these elections? Who are you looking at as in communities to really go out and advocate their voice?
So I like to see there's the general answer would be, well, young people, they should go out and vote. I actually think that one of the most powerful votes are the aunts and aunties in the community, the people who have been forging the small businesses, who have been forging the trajectory for people like you and I, who have been in our country for decades, and who need to make sure that tomorrow we have a place that we can still call our country and our home. Because these are the folks who left other countries where our vote was not respected, and often it was actually dangerous to vote. And so I want to see the aunts and aunties who generally stay home and don't vote, the folks over 50 who don't always understand the need to vote because maybe they say this doesn't really affect me, be as powerful and as loud of a voice when it comes to casting their vote as young people in their 20s and in their 30s. They deserve to be heard just as much.
Many are also saying that the Black votes and the Latinx votes will play a major role in perhaps the swing states as well as other states, that we're also looking at. What is your personal take on it?
Look, I think we have seen in the last congressionals and presidential race 4 years ago that the Latino and the Black vote are extremely important in these swing states. And I'm hoping that these are the folks who understand the power that they've began to harness and will go out this time and still exercise that right to vote. But I don't want it to just be about us. I want to see non-traditional voters like the South Asian community go out, like the Muslim voter, go out and make sure that they're casting their vote. Because the same way that we've been fighting to have the power of the Latino and the Black vote be recognized for decades, and finally now it's getting seen, this is a place where we can start to make sure that the South Asian, the Muslim vote, the vote of the uncles and the aunties can be recognized as powerful. So we have to start now.
Yes, for sure. Assemblywoman, I would love to ask you this question. What do you say to voters that just don't have faith in the system left anymore in either of the parties? Folks that are choosing not to vote, even in states such as New York, where we're traditionally just blue and most people do vote. What do you say to those people that are not willing to exercise this right?
So I want those people to think about 4 years ago when they made that decision not to vote. Because I can guarantee you the people who didn't vote now probably didn't vote 4 years ago. How is your life different now? Has this improved your life? And I can guarantee you that a lot of them are not as well off economically. A lot of them suffered during COVID. A lot of them have their rights endangered by the last 4 years of this administration. And then I want them to tell me if they're going to stay at home again and endure another 4 years of the exact same thing.
Yes, for sure. And I again want to recommend all our viewers to make sure and exercise that very important right to vote. Assemblywoman, while still I have you here, I want to discuss your personal view on both the campaigns that we have seen throughout the nation, of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. What have you felt about President Trump's campaign and his rallies that have been happening recently in comparison to how the Democratic nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, has taken his stand on hosting the way he's doing his campaign? What have you felt about both those campaigns?
Look, as someone who represents a community that was so hard hit by COVID, I find them to be extremely dangerous. When you have thousands of people not wearing a mask, and when you have a president who had COVID and an entire White House team who had COVID because they just refused to follow the protocols, it is dangerous. It is sickening, actually, and when you compare that to the other campaign where Vice President Joe Biden and Kamala have been making decisions of continuing to wear a mask, enforcing it, social distancing. I mean, think about the fact that the president refused to debate Joe again simply because the campaigns wanted to enforce these social distancing and health and safety rules. That alone tells you how little value this current president has for our lives.
Do you believe that they are reaching out to their supporters well, both the campaign, especially President Trump's campaign? Do you think he's reaching out to his base?
I think his base already likes him, whether he reaches out or not. He's doing a really good job of pandering to them, of offering them anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, anti-working poor agenda items via tweets, via news articles. And so in that aspect, he's making sure that he's taking care of his base.
Yeah, for sure. In comparison to that, I would love to discuss Senator Kamala Harris with you, woman of color, the first African American and South Asian American woman to have that huge party ticket. What does that mean for the rest of the Democratic Party? And when we're looking at communities of color, how has that impacted you personally?
Look, I think that means that there are seats in these rooms for people that look like us and that work in the way that we do, where we put people first. I am extremely proud to see a woman of color have that possibility. I think that more important than what I think is what little girls are seeing around our country. Little Black and brown girls are seeing someone that comes from their similar backgrounds, who looks like them, have the possibility of becoming the second most powerful person in our country.
Yes, for sure. And what a great moment of recognition for women of color. So important while we're discussing so much in women's rights and so on and so forth. I would love to get your comment on the SCOTUS hearings and Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination. Do you think this should happen before the elections, which is less than 15 days away?
Absolutely not. When the Republicans were faced with the same possibility of having a Democratic president appoint a Supreme Court justice before the election, they pushed and pushed and pushed, and we weren't able to do it. I think what's fair is fair, and we shouldn't be even engaging in the conversation until after the election. But the reality is, it's probably going to happen. She's probably going to get confirmed before the election, and we're going to be left with a very right-wing leaning Supreme Court, which makes it even more important for people to go out and vote, not just in the presidential election, but next year when we have the possibility of flipping the Senate and ensuring we have a greater majority in Congress.
Just a little note over here. I would love to get your comment on how you're looking at Roe v. Wade right now and the answers that we have gotten from Judge Barrett on it. If it is overturned, or if there is a question of overturning such a big piece of legislature, what would you do? What is in your power to do in order to ensure that women have their rights?
Look, I think what's in the power of the state legislature has already been done. We've already passed last year a law that basically codifies Roe v. Wade into the state laws of New York. So the women in New York are going to be protected. I'm not worried about the women in New York. I'm worried about the women in other parts of the country where their right to decide what happens with their own body is going to be is going to be thwarted by politics. No one in politics should have a say in it, and yet here we are.
Yeah, that is so true. And, women's right is definitely basically on the ballot this year. And again, we want to reach out to all the women so that they go and cast their votes. While we're talking about ballots, and when I still have you here for the interview, Assemblywoman, I would love for you to address everyone on the importance of voting, and not just that, using the ballots that are given to them. Do you have full faith in the system of mail-in ballots as well as drop-off ballots? Because that has been a concern of citizens nationwide.
Look, I have to be honest, I don't. I feel like this president is capable of just about anything. So if you are able to go to the supermarket and make a line to get food with your mask on and do what you need to do to survive, you can go and stand on a line with your mask on and do anything you need to survive by voting.
Yeah, that is so, so important. What states are you watching right now?
Arizona, Florida.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about Texas too, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, these were the swing states even in 2016 that really changed, the outcome of the decision. If you were to just address the community, Assemblywoman, on why they should advocate for their voice, why should they vote? What is the importance of that? What would you say?
I think many of the viewers come from countries where voting doesn't change anything. What we saw in 2016 is that voting for the wrong person can endanger your life, where not voting at all can endanger your life. And so that shows you how important it is to go out, cast your vote, and make sure that as a nation, we are saying loudly that we want and we deserve a change.
Yeah, that is so true. And in terms of the election results, President Trump hasn't quite agreed to accept it if it's not in his favor. Do you see this becoming a political issue after November 3rd? Do you believe that we'll have a decision on November 3rd?
We're not going to have a decision on November 3rd because there's mail-in ballots that have to be counted. I suspect we'll probably get a decision sometime in the 2 weeks after that. I do worry about a political coup and what that could mean if the president decides not to accept the results. But I think ultimately, if people are loud enough, he's going to have no choice, because otherwise the Democrats in Congress is going to have to act and physically drag him out of the White House if they need to.
Wow. Well, let's hope that all doesn't happen, Assemblywoman. We're hoping here for just safe, secure, elections where everyone can go vote and, their voice is counted. Thank you so much for being with us on ITV Gold. I would love for you to give one last message to our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to make sure that if you are registered to vote and you can vote early, remember that the early polling sites open up this Saturday and they run for about a week. Make sure you go out, make sure you cast your vote, make sure your voice is heard. And if you can go early, go in person on November 3rd, because the life of those you love, your own life, the life of your family literally depends on it this time. So make sure you go out and you vote.
Yes. Again, to our audience, make sure go out and vote. Assemblywoman just said everything we needed to hear. Thank you so much for your time again, Assemblywoman.
Thank you so much.